When I was a girl living deep within an Appalachian holler, my days were often spent perched on the splintered wooden steps of my grandma's porch. It began on an evening much like any other, with the crickets serenading the coming night and the scent of pine heavy in the air. Grandma would start in one of her stories of her childhood, and some she told would chill me to the bone. One tale that she swore was the God honest truth, passed down from her grandpappy to her, now to me, a warning to never be ignored. My grandma was but a girl herself then, wild-hearted and untamed, and her bare feet stained with the red clay of the holler. She knew all too well the one rule that our own mamma had etched into her little soul. Never go too deep into those woods that stretch behind our land. But children are drawn to the forbidden, and the tree line was a siren call that whispered of adventure and mystery. Grandma had been playing out back on the property down by the tree line, right here on this very property one evening, when she said she saw her cousin standing in the pasture. He just stood there at the tree line, just staring, but completely silent. She thought it was odd that he was quiet, since he was a loud-mouthed teenage boy, so she waved at him. He took off down the hill into the woods, gesturing for her to follow him. She did. As she followed, the air around her grew colder, and the sounds of the forest became muffled, as if she were moving underwater. The sunlight filtering through the dense canopy grew dimmer, casting long, menacing shadows that seemed to move on their own accord. The further she ventured, the more she realized the eerie silence was not complete. Whispers floated on the air, unintelligible and somehow both distant and alarmingly close. She remembered her mama's warnings too late. She was already deep into the woods. The figure of her cousin, which had seemed so clear at the pasture's edge, became increasingly indistinct, flickering between the trees like a mirage. Yet she couldn't stop herself from following, drawn by an inexplicable force. Suddenly, he vanished. She found herself in a clearing that she had never seen before, despite having roamed the outskirts of these woods all her life. It was unnaturally quiet, the silence oppressive, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. She called out for her cousin, her voice sounding alien in the hush. There was no reply, only the rustle of leaves as a chill wind swept through the clearing. Panic had set in, and she realized that she didn't know which way she had come. It was then that she heard the voices again, clearer now, but still impossible to understand. They seemed to be coming from all around her, and yet when she spun around, there was no one there. As the sun went down and the darkness soon enveloped her, she saw them. Figures at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the fading light. They were human in shape, but wrong in every other way, their silhouettes distorted, limbs too long and movements jerky, as if struggling against the very air that they moved through. And their faces were blank, smooth as stone, and featureless except for a fleeting moment. They would flicker and display the visage of someone that she knew, a neighbor or a friend from school or her cousin. Each glimpse was a twisted mockery, a stolen identity worn like a mask. She realized then the truth of her mama's warning and the chilling reality of the creatures who wear the faces of others. They were stolen, the lost ones who had wandered too deep and been claimed by the forest. The realization struck her with such force that she stumbled backward, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. But before she could turn to flee, The ground beneath her seemed to shift, roots and vines snaking out to grasp at her ankles, pulling her down. She screamed, fighting against the living tendrils, but they were relentless. Just as she felt her strength waning, a clear voice cut through the night. Her mama's voice, chanting words in an old tongue that she didn't understand. The vines recoiled as if struck, retreating back into the earth. Her mama then waved for her to follow her, a lantern in one hand and an old worn book in the other. Never forget, her mama said, her voice stern but tinged with relief. These woods are old and filled with secrets and beings that we cannot fathom. As Grandma had told that old story, I could still see the fear in her eyes and the worry. I wasn't sure if this was just a story to keep me from wandering, but I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to take that warning not to wander far, especially when it gets dark. So all you that walk in these Appalachian woods, remember, never be in the woods from dusk till dawn, and never leave the marked trail. It's marked for a reason. And if you hear voices close to you, they're far away. But if the voices are far away, they're near. Do not sing or whistle in these woods at night. And never, ever venture too far through those trees. In Appalachia folklore, there are creatures who wear the faces of others